in returning the land back into the hands of our people. And don't tell me about best, do we get the rest of our people owning the land?
Hello from wherever you're watching. Welcome to our channel. Today I want us to look at Julius Malema and his interview with the BBC and his ambition to redeem the black Africans in South Africa into economic freedom, something that the former presidents have not been able to achieve. Looking at his ambition, it gives an insight on the query on why these Africans have not been free for so long, even after 29 years since independence in 1994. South Africa is one of the icons of Africa, but its economy has been dominated by the minority whites in the country who own land that they literally acquired by stealing it from Africans. Now, you may wonder why the so-called independent South Africa is still struggling with the blacks who do not own land to an extent that they view foreigners as a threat to their unemployment. To begin with, I would like us to go back to the independence, or to the time of independence of South Africa. Or most of the African countries actually did not gain independence. That is, they did not take freedom. It was given to them through gradual processes, through negotiations, and this has never been good to the people, not in Africa. Something that you negotiate, you give your opponent an advantage. That means you still own them, that's why you're negotiating, and you don't own only what you claim to be having. Right? Now, I want us to look at this situation in South Africa. Most of the time, when the South Africans, the natives who were fighting for independence, Nelson Mandela was still incarcerated by the white government. And Winnie Mandela, his wife, was one of the core leaders who fueled the radicals, the harsh fight, the war against the Britons in the country. To win this war, the whites had to release Mandela, who was a more moderate man and more reasonable, so that he could reduce or minimize the casualties of war, particularly in terms of the whites. Now, the fact that they run majority of the country's wealth, it seems a threat enough that they can threaten it so, and maybe he might be even lenient. Yet, Mr. Julius is very clear that he is not relenting on this, and that he is willing to sacrifice anything for his people.
And other strategic sectors of the economy.
You know there are some South Africans, and let us be blunt, many white South Africans,
Yes,
who fear Julius Malema. Some of them have said to me, if Malema gets to power or close to power, I will leave this country.
Now, looking at the situation of war during the independence in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, the so decorated first president of South Africa, was in most of the time prison until when things were almost out of hand, and the white government had to play this trick of releasing Nelson Mandela and negotiating with him terms of giving his own country freedom. Yes, and from this perspective, Winnie Mandela, his wife, was the one of the most powerful leaders who fueled war against the whites, against the colonial government. To win it, they hand to Julius Mandela, who was more lenient and more reasoning, according to them. After negotiating for this freedom, the whites were allowed to retain land, and Mandela strived to attain peace for peaceful cohabiting of both the blacks and whites in the country. However, most of the blacks did not attain land which belonged to them by blood. Yes, by blood. They so call it in Europe. And that resulted to homelessness, joblessness, and economic dwarfness to the black people. Malema, now a young man who was grown during those times, has seen what it is like, what was deprived of their people, is now one of the aspiring candidates for presidency. In his